Hello.
Hey, it's Mike.
Oh, hi, Mr. Knuble. How are you?
Good. How you doing?
Good. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate it.
No problem. Are we recording? Are we just recording this?
Yeah, I'm actually live right now.
Oh, okay. Is it on your site then?
Yeah, yeah, yep,
Oh, okay. All
yeah.
right. Well, I was just like, I'm kind of like in a car. I'll be home in like 2 minutes, but that's fine. We can just begin then. Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, cool. Sounds
All right.
good.
Yep. All righty.
Yeah. So again, thanks for doing this. I appreciate it. Just a couple things, just to kind of start off. Obviously, you were a flyer for a little bit in your career. You kind of bounced around a pretty much you know a good chunk of teams. What are some of your favorite memories as a flyer?
Well, I think first of all, it was like even before joining Philadelphia, I thought it was ironic when I was being pursued by them in free agency that because I felt like I never played great against them.
Hmm.
I never felt like I was doing much, and not that that's how you decide on how on bringing a player in. You look at their overall package or whatever, but
Right.
it was kind of a place that I never really felt like I'd end up. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like I don't know. I never really thought about that. I think. Uh, so I was kind of surprised when they pulled it all together. But I remember the day I signed with them, we actually had a baby. I worked out. I played golf, signed with the Flyers, and had a baby all in one day. So our youngest son Cole, so I signed obviously July 1st, 2004, because
It's a
that's the
fun
day
day
my
to
son was
remember.
born. Yeah, that was the day my son was born, and now he's 18, almost 19 now. So it's I guess it's a long time ago, but it was certainly a place I didn't think I was going to play, but always kind of heard good things about it. Like Danny McGillis was there for a while, and he came to Boston when I was in Boston,
Hmm.
and um, so I always heard good things about it. There always seemed to be some sort of news happening in and around Philadelphia, but you know, it was always kind of a shock to hear that they were like pursuing you in free agency.
Right, for sure. Just kind of going off that, right? You kind of mentioned, how much of a shock it was for you, like, and all that stuff. Obviously, Ed Snyder's presence was pretty big with the team, and still is to this day. What, what, in your opinion, was his kind of presence like? Just being around him, and if like you hear so many stories about him coming down after every game, and shaking the guys' hands, win or lose, like all of that stuff. What was kind of Mr. Snyder's just his whole presence like?
Yeah, I mean that is certainly what he's probably ask any player that was kind of there when he was able to be with the team a lot and be around the locker room and stuff, and he'd always come in after games and come and say hello and do that kind of stuff, which is really cool. And you knew it was his team, right? There was no doubt whose team it was. You knew
Right,
who made the decisions around. I think that was a big thing too. Was it's kind of still like I came up through Detroit, where it's a mom and pop team, right? You had the Illiches, and
right.
then I moved to New York, and it was Cablevision. It was James Dolan, Cablevision.
Hmm.
Uh, Boston even was sort of like Boston was turning from kind of a mom and pop to the Jacobs family was going a little bit more corporate. But Ed was still you know he was splitting his partnership up, I think, a little bit at the time, like, but he was still the majority guy, and still everything that was being decided ran through him, whether it was trades and whatever else, trades and free agency, everything ran through his approval. And
Hmm.
obviously had the influence of Bob Clark around a lot, had Homer around, so there were a lot of these ex guys. If you weren't familiar with the organization at all, you got kind of a crash course on how this organization was built and who was involved in building it up,
Hmm.
and so, which was really cool. So it kind of went down from Ed, and he was very good about taking care of his guys that brought glory to Philadelphia, in the 70s. He was very good, and they proved to be good management type guys too, and directed the team for a long time. So, but his hands-on stuff, and very good to the families came, he valued the value of players' families, and they were good, and he made for kind of a meat, kind of the East Coast being kind of a meat markety, grinding, just kind of take no prisoners area, kind of to live in.
Hmm.
It was really like a family atmosphere with the Flyers that he projected.
Yeah, wow, that's awesome. Just kind of going off the Flyers now. You obviously played with current interim GM, and seems like he'll be the GM of the team, and Danny Briere. What did you kind of obviously there's so many stories you could probably tell about Danny, but what what do you think of Danny as just GM of the team now, and what are some of the things that you think that he can kind of bring to the table? As Flyers are obviously in a kind of a different spot that they've never really been in before, and kind of rebuilding and kind of in this like different spot of trying to find different things that kind of make the team better again.
Right, right. So it was kind of fun. Like I sat with Danny a couple times last summer, once at Flyers alumni camp, and then at the Flyers alumni golf outing too. So
Mm-hmm.
I saw him a couple times. We happened to just share breakfast or share lunch at those events. And Danny's very pragmatic. Like he's very, very calm and very soft spoken. And he's a thinker, and he thinks about what he's doing before he makes a decision. And that's the off ice part of him, where he's just very, he's not going to be the center of the attention. He's going to be in the back of the room, but he's very pragmatic about what he says, and I think that carries a lot of respect. As a player and as a teammate, guys knew that he gave a good effort on the ice, and was a great player and a great competitor on the on the ice. So. And I think what helped Danny was, I mean, he was in the league young, and I think he's an undersized guy playing in the 90s, which is not an easy task. And
Yeah.
so, like, Danny had been put on waivers at one point, and I think he was down at one point, and then resurrected himself again. So, he's kind of been through the ringer as a player. So he kind of has a lot to talk about in that respect. And kind of like he's kind of climbed, I've been the last guy in the lineup. I've been cut. I've been, this, that, I
Right.
wasn't the star all the time. And people see the finished product where he was the star, but he went through the ringer a little bit as a player too. That will help him. But he's obviously paid a lot of attention to what Paul's really helped him guide along, and other people, and Chuck in the front office, to really kind of groom him and show him the ropes. And it's been up to him to really take ownership of it, and fall in love with that part of the job.
Right. No, for sure. I mean, and it's crazy because he's even said like he's learned a lot with this stuff, and obviously from just being in Maine and all that stuff too. He seems like he's ready for the job, and he's started doing a lot already. But one thing that you kind of mentioned there was just everything that kind of just changed and how he kind of evolved, and obviously you guys as a team evolved too, because you were here for the 06-07 season. Wasn't the best year, and you guys were one of the worst teams in the league. The ticket sales were still great, all that stuff, and then go from one of the worst teams in the league to the Eastern Conference Final the following year. What was kind of the biggest thing from that? Because obviously we talked about Briere. You had Briere, you had Tiemann, you had Hartnell. Obviously a lot of other things kind of came into play, but what was the biggest thing in your eyes from that switch from 06-07 to 07-08?
Well, I think it even started before that, because we had the lockout in '05 there,
That's
04
right.
05 season. So teams come out of the lockout, the rules change, right? They all of a sudden, you had these tick-tack hookings. You couldn't impede guys. You couldn't obstruct guys. You couldn't, like, hold on and water ski. So all these big guys, were like, oh, shit, like, what are we going to do here,
Right.
And so teams were like, well, how do we build a team, And then I think that year we lost to Buffalo. In 05-06, we lost to them. That was Danny Briere-led team in Buffalo.
Yeah.
And they were much smaller and skilled. And then so Bobby tried to make an adjustment.
I think that was the
And
year with that hit on Berger.
Yeah, Umberger got hit by Brian Campbell there. Yeah,
Mhm.
right, which is kind of a memorable play. But then, so Bobby tried to revamp the team a little bit and try and got a little bit smaller and stuff, and it didn't work out right. So all of a sudden, we're in 06-07. We're like, crap, we got Peter Forsberg started going down with injuries. Simone was still a really good player. But Peter went down. That hurt. Your number one center was down. So we got off to kind of a funny start. Mike Richards and Jeff Carter were coming into their own. They weren't there yet, but they were getting better every year. So we're kind of on the up, on a different kind of transition. He still had Mike Ratchey was a big time minute guy, but he hurt his back. Yeah. He had Hatch was going down with knee problems. So some of our key guys started dropping, and which led to a really bad record. But kudos to Homer, and I think Bobby left too. Bobby stepped back and that, so Homer took over. So there's a lot of stuff going on. And then kudos to Homer, he grabbed Hartnell, got rights to Tiemann and signed those guys right away. Locked them up. I think we got Scotty Upshaw at one point. And I think Netamaki might have taken over in goal, and so there was some transition there, and obviously Danny was a huge part too. So I think part of it was figuring out how to negotiate the cap
Mhm.
and how to spend your money, where to spend your money, and what type of players you needed, and probably letting some guys go and trying to free up their money a little bit. So It
Right.
was it was, so there was a lot of stuff going on, but we were a much better team that year, and probably getting a little bit better talent wise, and probably some of the younger guys, yeah, Joffrey Lupul I think came in the mix too, so I think there's some young players that came in, and like the Richards and Carters, they evolved, and the younger players, are some of their high end draft picks got better too.
Right, exactly. And honestly, a lot of that is kind of similar to where the Flyers are now. I mean, they need a lot of those guys, and especially like managing the cap and all that stuff, kind of like what you were saying. Like that's one of the main things that Danny's going to have to kind of do here, because they're pretty tight with cap space, and there's a lot of different kind of just questions surrounding the certain guys kind of on the team now. But just kind of going off of that, what are kind of your thoughts on on the direction of the team now? Where do you kind of stand on the rebuild so far?
Yeah, it takes time, right? And what I found in the salary cap age is like you just got to be bad at the right time. Like this year you have a generational player coming out in Connor Bedard, who is a generational guy. I think the top 2 or 3, 4 picks you get last year were really good.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get one of those guys. It's like, I guess you got Cutter Goche, and I think he was 3. So yeah, you got.
He was at
there's
5,
a start,
yeah.
or
Mm-hmm.
5, yeah. So Cutter's gonna be a good player. He's, quite frankly, he's not a superstar. He's not gonna be a superstar, but like the Pittsburghs, look when they were bad. Look who they get. Crosby one year,
Mm-hmm.
they get Malkin the next. Look when Washington's bad, they get Vetchkin, they get Backstrom the next.
Mm-hmm.
You look at Chicago when they're bad, they get Kane, they get Taves, and it's just like you gotta find one of those. You got to straight gold in that respect.
Right.
That's going to be how you're going to build a team.
That's
for
the easy
another
part,
10
yeah.
years. That is, yeah. And you do have to straight gold, but and Connor Bedard is one of those really talents. Adam Fantilli, the number 2 this year, is one of those talents. So as a GM, do you make one of these bold moves where you just say, you know what, I'm gonna sell the farm and I got to get a couple of these. I got to get 1 or 2 of these young guys and really, and then you go Goche and you start to build and
especially if they win the lottery next week too, because that could be huge.
Yeah, I know you hope for luck in the lottery where you get one of these and can you parlay a deal and do that, and that's where GM's got to get creative and think and really be a used car salesman to figure out a deal here, that you can get somebody tempted to look at it and to jump, so
yeah,
it's you're gonna have to give up assets. And it's funny, I think good GMs, I think they'll get rid of guys before they should almost.
Yeah.
And you max them out when they're at the highest value, and maybe you got to give up somebody who you really 99 times out of 100 you don't want to give them up, but for this I got to move this guy. I got to get him ahead, value, and I got to get him before he's probably even popped, where we might even as a group think he's better and he's got room to grow, but we got to do it now to capitalize on our return, and sure, we'll miss the player, but we're going to get something good from return, and and try and turn those picks or whatever that is to something really concrete. So that's where you got to get lucky a little bit, in some of your decisions,
And that's the thing, because
we'll see what happens.
Right, especially too, because the Flyers have never won the lottery. Close they got was 2, and that was twice with Van Riemsdyk in 2007, and then Patrick in 2017. So and obviously that kind of really set them back. But
it's hard too. It's hard because Detroit saw that. They didn't draft anybody in the top 20 for like 25 years.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's like, how do you go around it? Well, yeah, you find guys in Europe, you find the Zetterbergs in Europe, and you find Johan Franzen in Europe. And you get lucky with some of those. Yeah, you can pull Datsuk from Russia. And that's not hard because the world, I think back in the day a little bit, you could hide, guys could get hidden a little more, and you didn't talk about them. But now, internet, and everybody talks too much anyway with Twitter and all that. So guys get exposed. You can't, there's nobody hiding under rocks anymore. So you do have to get lucky, and you got to pull something out of Europe, and somebody you got to get lucky. You got to take a stab at somebody and get real lucky.
Right, exactly. So, just a couple more things. What was kind of going again? I've never really I've kind of learned this as I've been doing this for the past couple of years. Like players don't, or current players, former players, whatever. They don't really remember specific plays unless they're really rememberable or something like that. But I have to ask, and you've probably been asked this a million times, but what was kind of going through your head in Game 4 of 08 with the double overtime goal?
Yeah, no, I think. Oh yeah, against Washington. Yeah,
Uh,
that was one of my. Yeah, that's one of my more memorable Philly moments. Besides me and Brendan Shanahan colliding and breaking my face.
yeah.
That's my other that's my other most
I think
Googleable
the other one
moment.
is
Yeah,
probably the alumni game when you took the puck up high.
yeah. There's another one. Yeah, yeah. I got hit last year in an alumni game, broke my
Mm.
cheek there too. So,
Did you really?
but no, that's yeah, yeah. I ended up. They sent me to the for a CAT scan the next morning. Jimmy McCrossan did, and yeah, they're basically like that's because I already have a plate there from the first time when I broke my cheek with Shanahan.
Right.
They put a plate under my eye, and then I'm like it hit right below that plate, so I'm like, oh crap, either it didn't break or it blew that plate apart, and I'm gonna be here for like 3 days getting surgery. So I was like, oh,
Oof.
so but then they're like, hey, we just want to send you in the next morning, just send you out just to make sure you're all set. And they go, yeah, it's cracked, kind of like an eggshell. We wouldn't really do anything, just don't get hit in the face for a couple weeks. And I was like, okay.
There you go.
So anyway, yeah, but no, that Washington series was great. Ovechkin, Backstrom, Mike Green, Alex Semin. They were starting to really turn into really good players, and we had them down there. And then game 4, I think we ended up going 3-1 or something on that win. But yeah, that was one of my bigger Philly goals. That was really exciting. I think I was playing with Scotty Upshall and Jeff Carter, and
Yeah.
we were probably we were a pretty good line. And yeah, I can't believe if that was the year that the way we turned out or whatever. But yeah, that was a big thrill. That was good. That was one of my more memorable Philly goals for sure. Just got a couple whacks at it and stayed on it and finally chipped it up and over them.
Right. Yeah.
I have a still picture. I have this still picture in the game sheet. Like somebody in Philly framed it for me. So
Okay.
I have it mounted in my basement at home here in Michigan. So.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's sick.
Yeah.
Just a couple more things. Are any, just funny stories overall from when you were with the Flyers? Obviously, it was 2 stints, the 1 year and the second lockout coming back. But just any funny stories you might be able to share?
I don't know. We have
I don't
good
mean to put you on the
stuff.
spot, but
I know. And people always ask for good stories. And like to your point, it's really hard to recollect stuff. There's just so many moments. Like,
well, yeah, and that's the thing, and like so
little
many,
things.
yeah, and and especially when as you kind of get into it and you get settled, like at least if for me, at least if I was in the NHL again, I can't even ice skate, but I would kind of just like all right, well this is just like every day, and then I'd kind of forget things, you know what I mean? So.
Yeah, I know lots. But like. I think I had my one career hat trick in Philly. It was kind of cool, like the neighbors all, and that's part of why it was one of my favorite times living in South Jersey. Like, we really knew our people in the neighborhood, and they, came out and there was hats. Every kid in the neighborhood found a couple hats, and threw them all in the yard and stuff like that. So we got all for the game, and so that was fun for our kids to do that. And I don't know, memorable. Like after we lost out our first year, I mean, we were having beers post game or maybe it was the same night or a day after, and. I think it was a Hatcher, Darian Hatcher, his wife, Mike Ratchie, Turner Stevenson, and Chris Terry and I had a horse in the Kentucky Derby, and so he said, and Ratchie had a motorhome, so we're like, screw it, let's leave tomorrow and go to the Kentucky Derby. So like, I think our wives are like looking around, they're like, not one of them was going to say no, right? They weren't going to be the wife saying no. They're looking around at each other, and we're like, yeah, this is happening. So we like loaded up the next morning, and the 4 of us just got in Mike Ratchie's motorhome. I think he peed one time from Philadelphia to Louisville. Drove through the night. We stopped at West Virginia. Where's in Morgantown, West Virginia. Stopped there at like 11 o'clock and had a couple. Rathy was driving, so he didn't drink. But we all piled into like college bar, right? Bought a few rounds for the kids. Loaded back up. Left. Spent the night in like a Walmart parking lot. Bought breakfast at the Walmart or at the whatever Bob's Evans in the same parking lot.
Yeah.
Continued on. Didn't even have a hotel room. Found some sort of hotel room and then just partied for 3 days and got a mobile home and went back home. So that was pretty good. Chris Terry had a horse in there, so it was great. We were in suits. We were down the owner's paddock area. The Stanley Cup was there. Like we were like kings. We were like thoroughbred kings, man. We like in the horse business for like a weekend. We were like, it was great.
That's awesome. That's so
yeah,
good.
that was a fun one. Yeah, it was a fun outside of hockey story. That was good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
So, yeah.
Again, Mr. Knuble, thanks so much for doing this. I appreciate it. It was really, really good hearing your insight and everything you kind of had to say. And obviously, the story at the end was hilarious. So,
yeah, I know. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks again, and hopefully we can do it again sometime.
All right, Chris. Have a good day, buddy. Thank you very much.
All right, I'll talk to you. Bye.